You do your thing, okay?
All right, no doubt.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Grove Studios community. My name is Rob Wallace. I am the educational programs coordinator for Grove Studios. I am also assisting with the Amplify Fellowship, which is one of the reasons that we are here tonight. We'd like to thank you for coming out and joining us tonight. These workshops are going to be happening the last Sunday of every month for the next few months. And we're happy to announce Nelson K. Johnson as joining us for the first edition of the Grove Workshops. Tonight, we're going to be talking about music production. So we're going to be talking about music production from a different angle. Nelson graced us with his presence for Grove Sessions a few weeks ago, and he shared with us expertise, but he really wants to be able to dig in deep with you as the producer and potential producers to really do what I call turning your beats into bread. So
yes,
right.
I like that.
Right. So we like to welcome everybody from Facebook, everybody from YouTube. We're not going to go through a bunch of stuff, but as always, follow us at Grove Studios. You can also follow Grove Studios at Facebook, on Instagram as well. You can also follow Nelson K. Johnson on Facebook, follow 85 Productions LLC. And you can follow me at Instagram at Where is Wallace. For more information about Amplify, you can go to amplify-fellowship.com. We're very excited about where we are. We did have the opportunity to choose our finalists, and we'll be publicizing those finalists sometime this week. So without further ado, and I'm going to let Nelson kind of introduce himself a little bit. Without further ado, I turn it over to Nelson Johnson. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Nelson.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you, Rod, and thank you, Grove. Welcome, everybody. I'm Nelson K. Johnson, and I always say, don't forget the K, right? So I'm what I call a Sync Licensing Strategist. I'm a composer, music producer, songwriter. I've produced music for plenty of networks, MTV, VH1, BT, Oxygen, Bravo, UMC. We have music on Netflix. So we're kind of all over. And I am the owner of 85 Productions. And I am the founder and owner of Super Sync Squad. And as a sync licensing strategist, my goal is to teach others and show others the strategies that I use and the strategies and the things that I implement to get your music on TV. The objective is ultimately turning your music into money, okay? Because we all want to make a living doing what we love to do. And in this case, it's music. So we're going to cover those topics tonight here. And I'm going to start off with the presentation where we start with the 4 steps you have to take before you license your music. So before you get into this at all, we're going to talk about the 4 steps you must take. And then we're going to take it to the next level and talk about what you're going to do after you've completed these 4 steps. All right. So we're going to get started here. And again, thank you guys for joining us. So let's get started. So an overview of this first section, we're going to talk about performance rights affiliation, picking the right music, the basics of metadata when it comes to sync licensing and pitching your music. And we're going to talk about tracking your music as well. Okay. Oh, wow. We got a little hiccup here. All right. So the first thing is, what is a pro? Pro is short for Performance Rights Organization. And I'm going to read a little blurb and then I'll have some comments afterwards. So when your music is played on radio or TV, placed in a film or video games, your pro is there to ensure that you are paid the royalties that your music generates from that exposure. The 3 major pros that we all hear about all the time, we have BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC. And you only, as a songwriter, okay, you can only register, or you only need to register with 1 pro. And I'm going to go over that in a little more detail on the next slide. So the pros, we have BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC. Ultimately, they all do the same thing, which is they collect money on your behalf. When your music is performed, it generates royalty, and BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC, they're on your side to make sure that you get those royalties. CSAC is kind of special because it's most like a invite only, or you have to know someone who knows someone to be allowed into CSAC. But BMI and ASCAP are the most notable, I would say, or the most familiar to everyone. There is a fee with BMI, and there's also a fee with ASCAP, with the exception that BMI, you can sign up for free as a writer. Okay. But what I want to stress is the roadblocks that producers or music creators have initially is always signing up with a pro. Before you do anything and before you're able to collect any type of performance money, you need to sign up with a performance rights organization. And don't get this confused with copyright, because there are two different things. Okay. But make sure that you sign up with a pro before you start even thinking about licensing your music, because when you start getting into opportunities and when you start getting approached and pitching music, the first question that you're going to be asked is, send me your PRO information. All right. Now, when you get to the level after you've signed up with a performance rights organization, you start getting into the registration process. And later on in the slides, we'll kind of emphasize on these things here. But when let's say you picked BMI, okay? So you're with the BMI. If you are pitching your music to a music supervisor, then most likely you are going to be responsible for handling your registrations. Same as when you pitch to a production company, let's say Entertainment One, for example, right? If you're working directly with an TV production company, you will be responsible for handling your registrations as well. Now, we have what we call music libraries, and music libraries are essentially publishers who have a large collection and who represent a large collection of music, right? So they'll handle all of the administration work for you, most times in return for half of your publishing. But the most important thing here that you heard me say a few times is registration. In order for you to collect money that your music is generating, you need to be registered with a pro, and you need to have the songs registered in your account or in your catalog, because you can get a placement on the hottest show out there on TV or in the biggest movie. If it's not registered, there's no way that they can track, the funds that are coming in. So if you're not registered with a pro and your song isn't registered correctly, then you're going to miss out. So whether you're working with a music supervisor, a music library, or a production company, always make sure you cover your bases to make sure the songs are registered and registered correctly. Now, a question I get a lot is, who should I pick? Ultimately, it's going to depend on, what you want from your performance rights organization. Okay. Now, out of ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, they all do the same thing in terms of collecting for you, but some of them have different discounts and different types of events. So that might sway you to one side or the other. I always tell people I chose BMI because I had a friend of mine who was with BMI, and it just made the process a little easier. Okay. So overall, regardless of who you pick, you need to make sure you're with the performance rights organization. That's the very first step, as Rod said, that you need to take to turn your beats into bread. That's the very first step. All right. Now, the next step, as a producer, we tend to create a lot. We're always in the lab creating songs, creating beats, and everything, just being creative. But in order to reach that next step and to kind of transition into creating music for film and television, your music needs to be prepared correctly, right? And a lot of times we like to think that, we go in the studio, we make the music, and that it's the best music we ever made, right? Which the confidence is there and the confidence should be there. However, there is a method to consistently landing placements and landing the kind of placements that you want in regards to film and television. So that's what we're going to go into in this next slide here, is preparing your music, or preparing your best music, because the first impression is everything. All right. Had a little glitch. Go back here. All right. So these initial tracks will be your first impression. I recommend picking tracks that showcase your versatility and your creativity. Choose the tracks that you think makes you stand out from the crowd. And the focus points that we have here are mixing, music structure, and then the types of music, the type of music that you should pitch. Mixing. This subject here is very, very subjective, because not everyone is a mixing and mastering engineer. All right. Most of us were working out of a home studio. You may have very little experience in terms of mixing and mastering, but we do have the idea of what something sounds like, and we can tell if it sounds good or if it sounds bad. And that's really, really a determining factor in this. You want to make sure that your music is audible. So this blurb here I have: a good mix will make sure that your music comes across the way it is intended. Remember, this will be your first impression, and you want to be perceived as a professional. Keep in mind that music libraries, supervisors, and editors are most likely on a tight schedule, and they don't have time to coach you on mixing and getting your music to sound right. They can they can really love your track, but if it's not audible, you will lose out on an opportunity. So I always like to give kind of like my firsthand experiences. When I initially started out, it was a challenge with me with mixing, most likely because of my level of experience. I never really took a lot of time to try to mix my music and master it because I thought it sounded good. But as I entered this with an opportunity, the mix kept coming back. The mix not good enough. The mix is not good enough. And I literally tried everything that I could. I tried to turn things down. I tried to add EQ. It was just crazy. And the pressure was on because it was time sensitive, because the ideas were there, but the mix just wasn't there. So as a sync licensing strategist, where I am today, the strategy that I'm going to teach you is exactly what I use to really consistently start getting my very first placements and start getting into these libraries. And I like to think outside the box and not work harder, but work smarter, as they say. So how to achieve a perfect TV mix. Now, the first thing I did was, I'm gonna have here is have your music mixed by an experienced film and TV composer. Then you have purchase a mix and mastering template, and then reference tracks. This first one here, as I was mixing this music and I figured out this is taking me days, it's taking me days to get a perfect mix. I'm on YouTube. It's just not working for me, and time is of the essence. So I had to make an investment. I had to make an investment that was going to help me long term. And that investment was getting my music mixed by someone who has done this before. And they always say, if you can't do it yourself, you can always pay somebody to do it, whether you pay them on the back end or maybe you pay them up front. But if you have your music mixed by an experienced film or TV composer, the one thing that you can assure is that it's going to be mixed exactly how you need it, right? So for instance, I reached out to someone who had music on like the Kardashians and the NFL, the NBA, like all of this. And so what that told me is, well, his mix is good enough to get placed. So that's who I reached out to, and I made this investment into getting them to mix a song for me. Now, mind you, it was only one song. Okay. Now, the next thing I did was implement the strategy that I need to move forward, and you won't likely be able to pay for hundreds of mixes. You're going to have to learn how to do it eventually. So then I purchased a mix and mastering template from this same exact person, right? Now, the two problems that solved for me were I had a professional TV mix, right? Then I also had a template to work off of. So this template really helped me to kind of create and see what was happening in the mix. Okay. So that's very important because that was a part of my learning strategy. And then ultimately the reference tracks, the one track that he mixed for me for a while, I used that track as my reference in terms of volume, in terms of where I place different instruments, and things of that nature. So that's how I achieve what I call my perfect TV mix, and every mix is going to always be different because you have different elements and different sounds. Okay. But the one thing remains true is that you have a foundation to build off of. And that's what this whole entire thing is. As a sync strategist, I teach people the foundation. And these are the foundational things that you need to, go forward. So now after you've achieved the mix, the next thing you have is your structure. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you a rundown of how I structure the tracks. Now, normally as a producer, and especially when we're used to working with artists, we kind of structure the tracks in such a way where we have an intro, then we may have a hook, then we have a verse, then we have the hook again, might have a bridge, then you have another verse. And then the track just kind of fades out. A lot of that is typical for all of us who create music and write songs. But when you're talking film and television, you have to start thinking that there's dialogue there for one, and what you're trying to do in film and television, you're trying to drive emotions and you're trying to enhance the dialogue and enhance what's on screen. So now, instead of building it in such a way where it's hook, verse, fade out, now you need to tell a story in a very short period of time. And one thing that I've learned is that in reality TV or just TV in general, the track kind of switches every 30, 45 seconds. Now, with that happening, that only gives you less than 1 minute to kind of drive a whole entire scene. And if you've ever watched, let's say Love and Hip Hop, right? If you ever watch some of these reality shows, there's a lot that's going to happen in 30 seconds. Whether somebody comes in and they're a little emotional and then it turns dramatic, like there's a lot going on in a short period of time. So in terms of your structure, you have to think about structuring your music in such a way that it can convey maybe 2 or 3 different type of emotions in one track. Okay, because that's going to consistently help you build your catalog, and it's going to help you have a versatile catalog, and it's going to help you, ultimately get more placements because one track can serve multiple purposes. To explain a little more, what I like to do, if you guys can visualize this, I have one track, but every 4 bars, I try to make it I try to make it sound different. Okay. I try to make it sound different. I try to make it into a brand new track. So each section presents a brand new idea, but it's also staying on topic of my original idea. Okay. So just always keep that in mind. Keep in mind when you're developing your tracks, especially for TV, you want to be able to share a lot of different emotions and a lot of different ideas in this one track. So that's what I talk about, or that's what I mean when I talk about structure. Structure it in such a way that it's going to increase your placements. And let's see what we have next. So now we're going to talk about the best music to pitch. But before I get into that, there's one thing that I wanted to add in here, and I want to see if I can do this really quick because we don't have the audio. Back to the structuring your music. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of the term sting ending, But picture it like this. You have, instead of having your track fade out, right, it's going to go dun, 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 right? It's like a kind of an abrupt stop, right? And it kind of builds up to that climax and dun, it just stops. Now, those are important because that kind of closes the track out, okay? So it'll close the track out and make room for whatever's happening next. So kind of keep that in mind as well. And keep in mind too, guys, you can go visit my website. It's www.nelsonkjohnson.com, where I have tools for you that you can see interactive examples on how to create a sting ending. Definitely follow me on Instagram, because you will see that I put out these different kind of tips all the time to make sure I'm able to help you guys as best I can. So moving on, another question I get is, what is the best music to pitch? And this is sort of a loaded question, because it's always going to depend on, you know, what your goals are and what your aim is. So always keep in mind first that if you are a hip hop producer, okay, and you create hip hop and rap beats, but occasionally you might experiment and then you create an EDM track. Now, it's no harm in showing your versatility, but you have to understand that you can create as many tracks as you want, but if you create what you're comfortable with and what you're familiar with and the things that you can crank out consistently, that's going to always be the best thing that you should pitch when you start getting into that we reach that level of pitching your music. You know, you want to pitch the type of music that really tells who you are. Okay. For an example, let's say again, you know, I make 50 rap beats, but I made an EDM beat just on a whim. You know what I mean? Now, if I pitch that and that company or that music supervisor really loves that EDM track, and that was just something that I was experimenting with and I'm not really used to it, you could be asked to create 10 more tracks exactly like it. And they might need those tracks the next day. They might need them in a week. So now you're going to create a lot of rush and a lot of work for yourself versus pitching what you are great at. All right. And don't get it confused with me saying not to be versatile, because versatility helps a lot, but you just don't want to get yourself in a situation to where you're called upon and then you can't deliver, because a lot of this game is definitely about quantity so much as it is about quality, but quantity is going to always be king, because the more placements you get, the bigger your checks are going to be and the more consistent you're going to be able to build your resume. So all in all, the best type of music to pitch is what's here in your heart. You know what I mean? What's here in your heart and what comes natural to you. That's going to be the best music that to pitch when you're going into film and television. All right. Now, after you've registered with a pro and after you've had your music structured properly and after you have, picked your music and everything, you want to make sure that you are tagging your music. And we do this with metadata. And metadata is data about data, or some people say data, right? Now, the Guild of Music Supervisors, which is a huge collective of top music supervisors, they recommend as much information as possible included in the metadata of all digital music submissions. Information, that is a keyword. All right. A lot of mistakes that I see people really loading up their loading up the metadata with, oh my goodness, with so many different words, just thinking that, okay, if I put a lot of different keywords here in this metadata, it's just going to get picked up. But that's really the wrong approach. You don't want to approach it that way at all. You want to be purposeful about what it is that you are doing here in the metadata. So I'm going to briefly pull up an example. All right. Now, this example here, what you see here, we have the song name, then we have the artist name, and actually, let me show you a better example because I wanted to show you. Let's get on here. Here we go. This one will be a little more interesting to show you guys here. All right, let me find it. Here we go. Bam. All right. So, boom. All right. Okay. So here is an example of how I like to do the metadata when I am submitting to, music libraries or music supervisors or production companies. The first thing are my details. So you always want to have an appropriate song title. All right. And I like to approach the song titles in such a way that it really describes the beat or it drives home the point of what I created the music for. So if I created this track for, say, a sports show, then I would try to keep the name, incorporate sports into the name. All right. So in this instance here, the track that was submitted, it was submitted for a request, and they requested Little Yachty style music. All right. So hence the name Baby Boat. Right. So if you heard a Little Yachty, then you will understand the reasoning behind the name, but that just makes it stand out. So if someone is ever consciously looking for a Little Yachty type beat, then on the subconscious side, when they hear Baby Boat, then they might connect the two, and my track has a higher chance of getting clicked on. Okay. You have the artist name. If it's a part of an album, the album name, the album artist, the composer information. That's important because they can pick the track. So they really like to know who, like, they want to know the splits for the track. So I tell them my name, tell them my PRO, and the percentage. And again, if you have multiple writers, you just make sure you have this information here. Down here in the grouping section, I have can be cleared one stop through Nelson, company name, phone number, and my email address. I put this information here because I want them to know that one stop means they can come to me and they can clear the music right away. They don't have to go through anybody. It's going to happen as soon as they contact me. All right. So I'm letting them know that you can come to me and the music is already cleared. I tell them who to talk to. I tell them my company name. I give them my phone number in case they want to call. And then I also give my email in case they want to email me anything about the track or have any questions. All right. Then, of course, you want to add the genre, the year. And again, if it's a part of an album, you want to make sure that you have, if it's track number 3, 4, or 5. So what this tells them is that, oh, I clicked on this beat. I like it. And oh, wow, this is a track that's a part of 10 other tracks, right? So now they may find 10 other tracks that are similar to what they have already, right? So that kind of gives them these little subconscious tidbits. And that's what the strategy is all about. You have to, figure out ways to think outside the box to increase your chances. The BPM is always great for them to have. Down here in the comment section, this is where I would see people do things like this. They will put rap, R&B, rock, love, happy, right? So they'll go on a tangent and have so many keywords. Okay. The problem with that is this track, it is a rap track. So it's not anything R&B-ish about it. You know what I mean? There's nothing love about this, there's nothing rock and roll about this track. So a lot of people flood this section, or they flood the metadata with a lot of words, and they might do things like angry, mad, evil. You know what I mean? Those things are ultimately or almost the same in terms of emotions, okay? But the objective here, keyword wise, is to be purposeful, because a lot of times editors and supervisors, they're looking for something very specific. So the more specific you are, the more chances you have for your track or your music to fit where you intended it and where it should fit. So for this track, I had something like I had the key because, or I'm sorry, I had the key. So they might be looking for something G sharp maybe, right? And if they are, my track is going to pop up, So you have the tempo again. It's like a slow beat and hype beast, Oh, I'm sorry, I said hype beast, but autocorrect got me. So you don't need a lot of keywords, but you do need quite a bit. But you want to be purposeful. That's the whole point that I'm trying to drive here. You want to be purposeful and not kind of be, just throwing stuff to see what sticks, because that's not going to help you in the long run. Because if I tag this track rock and roll, right, and it has nothing to do with rock and roll, as soon as someone's looking for a rock and roll track and my Little Yachty style track pops up, they're going to keep seeing my name like, oh, this guy doesn't even know how to tag his tracks correctly. And you could be shooting yourself in the foot. So always be purposeful with that. I also like to add artwork, because otherwise, when you don't add artwork, what happens is you're left with this little symbol right here, right? Which is nothing, nothing wrong, but we always want to take it up a notch. So we can add artwork here, because now that tells them that you took it a step further and that you were a little more dedicated into the submission process. Okay. If you have a song that has lyrics, this is a great place to add your lyrics. You can, you have the intro lyrics and you have the hook and then the bridge. So if your stuff has, if you have lyrics and everything, they can kind of go through, they can look at the details. They say, oh, it's some fancy artwork. And then they can go to the lyrics and they can see that maybe this track contains something that's spot on to what it is they're working on. Okay. They could be working on a love movie or a love show, right? And it could be about somebody love, in Arkansas, right? So if for whatever reason your music has Arkansas in it, that might be perfect for that scene. So the thing is, you want to be purposeful. That's what I'm trying to drive home here. So when it comes to metadata, be as purposeful as you can, and trust me, you will not regret it. All right. All right, let me make sure. There we go. So with that little blurb, we have who will use the metadata: music supervisors, music libraries, and editors. What will they use it for? To search the songs they want and need quickly and accurately. How will they use it? They will search key terms pertaining to their project. And does it solve their problem? This helps them get exactly what they need when they need it without too many detours. And always keep that in the back of your mind too. As a entering in film and television, as a composer, music producer, songwriter, your objective is to solve the problem of the end user, which is the supervisor or, again, the editor or the music library. And it's not so much a problem. It's they need music and they need the right kind of music and they want the right kind of music. So your responsibility is to deliver that to them in the best way possible. Okay. So this blurb I have here, all of the tracks that you plan on submitting should have the proper metadata attached. This will help with how your music is found and will increase your placement opportunities in the long run. If you properly update the metadata in your tracks, anyone who wants to use your music will be able to play the track in iTunes or whatever app they use to listen to music and view the following. They'll be able to see the genre, the moves and the styles, the tempo, and then contact information and things that really stand out to them, such as artwork, to help you, as Rod said, eliminate these barriers, right? That's going to stand in between you and who who wants to use your music. You know, always remember, make it as easy as possible for the end user. All right, we went through that. This here, again, be purposeful. That's really, you know, I want to keep saying that because a music supervisor once told me, you know, we had a phone conversation and she just mentioned that she gets tracks and the tracks literally have so many keywords. So no matter what you type in, that track pops up, you know, and that can be a good tactic. But again, you want to be remembered not as the guy that put the guy or gal that put so many words into their, you know, in their keyword section, but somebody who was actually concise at what they were doing. Concise in what they were doing. All right. So after we've covered the metadata and you got your tracks mixed good, you got the metadata cracking, and you have you're with the pro. After you have all that completed, the next step is to make sure you are organized and you are tracking your music. This way you can keep track of where you send your songs. You can make sure you collect every royalty, and then you can find out where your music is being played, which is always super cool. Okay, so let me prepare another example for you guys briefly. So again, tracking your songs is important because you definitely need to know when you start sending out a lot of music, you want to know who you send it to. You want to know what your music is doing. You want to know if it's gotten any placements ultimately, you know. So this next section is going to help you in that area. The first thing I did was I created a spreadsheet, right? So when you're being detailed is a major part of success in music licensing. That is why I created this Excel sheet. This is another way to track your music as you grow your submissions and your connections. Okay. So in this example, what you have here, you see I have where I will put my track name, if my license was exclusive or non-exclusive, the company, who I talked to, and the date that I did all of this. This will help you have a mental note, and it'll help you hold yourself accountable for following up. So let's say I go through and I fill all of this out and I license this on the first of the month, right? If I revisit my spreadsheet and it's been 30 days, then I'm like, I haven't heard anything. Maybe I should follow up. Okay. Because sometimes a follow up is really going to be what's standing between you and getting your music placed. Sometimes they're just waiting on you. You know, I've had instances where an email was deleted on their end and they followed up with me. So anything can really happen in terms of, you know, keeping track of what you're doing with your music. And then one cool thing, there's a platform called TuneSat. Now, the dope thing about this platform is that I'm trying to get an example for you guys. The dope thing about this platform is that you can upload 50 tracks for free. And after you upload those tracks, it literally scans, you know, different TV shows, right? It's not different TV shows, but different networks. Okay. They have a vast variety of networks, and the free account is pretty good, but you can definitely pay, which offers more features. But the free account will definitely give you some idea. So whether your tracks was played in a movie or something that was on a movie on TV, Netflix, on VH1, any of these things, is going to track it. And I want to show you guys an example of what that actually looks like here. And instead of doing that, I did it wrong. All right, let me get this in here really quick. All right. So what you're looking at on the screen here is one of my TuneSat accounts that I use for, you know, for demonstration purposes, right? So what we have here, the cool thing is on this side right here, when you press play, it gives you the exact part where it scans your music. Okay, so let's say this was Love and Hip Hop. So when I click play on here, I'm going to hear the part where they used my music. They do give you a duration, but most of the time the duration is just what the system picked up. The placement might be a little longer. Here it is, almost the same track. It was 27, but they picked up 8 here, 27 here. Could have been a different scene. But again, as you can see, it shows that, this was back in 2017, but it shows that my track right here was used on VH1, Love and Hip Hop Hollywood, the episode Boy Band, right? And the way that this helps is because let's say this was used on, let's use the Kardashians, right? It was used on the Kardashians, but I'm like, hey, I never submitted music to anybody who was involved in that, right? Then that will cause me to say like, well, what's happening here? But this is just another way for me to cover my bases, and it literally picks up, it picks up everything, which is really good. And it's also, it also serves as a motivational factor, because during this time when you're licensing your music and you're getting into the process, what's happening is you're waiting to make money. So everything that you do in year 1, you have to have a mental about you to know that you're going to be waiting. You won't see any of that money until maybe close to year 2. All right. So this kind of serves as a inspirational thing, because when I first started using it, I go and it's cool. I'm like, oh man, my music just got played on Love and Hip Hop or like VH1. And then you see now it's played on MTV. Then I have ESPN. Then you go down, then it has a cooking channel. Then you have Food Network, Oprah Winfrey Network. So for me, it always serves a purpose, not only to track my music and to know what my music is doing and how my music is doing, but it also gives me that motivation to say, yo, at least something is happening. And that's what you're going to need a lot of when you enter making music for film and television. So as a recap, everyone, the first thing you need to do is get affiliated with a pro. That's how you get paid and turn your beats into money, right? Secondly, you need to prepare your music, make sure it's mixed and structured correctly. Next, you want to make sure your music is tagged correctly, and you want to put in a system that you can track your music, whether it be a spreadsheet, an application like TuneSat, which you can find at tunesat.com. That's TUNESAT.com. All right. And this is going to end the first section of this slide. And I like to always end with this here. Benjamin Franklin says, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And the U.S. Army, prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And a lot of these things I told you guys is because when I first started out, it was really a new journey for me, entering in. So it was a lot of things that I skipped over, a lot of things that I did wrong. And again, as your Sync Licensing Strategist, I'm always here just to show you what not to do, right? What not to do and what you should do to help you in the long run, to help when everything is as you're squaring away everything and starting to increase your placements. This next section here that we're going to talk about, I really love this section. This is where you start getting into the submission process and understanding what all the foundation parts were about. So previously, these go to the key players. I'm sorry. Boom. So when you start submitting your music after everything is good, you have the key players, and you need to know who these people are, because these are the people who you need to search them out, research them. And these are people who you need to get your music to. So you have music supervisors, TV and film editors, showrunners, AKA directors, music coordinators. Those are the people who make decisions, right? Now, the likelihood of you really getting in touch with these people, it becomes slim because they're very, very busy. And that's just the reality of it. It's going to take a lot of elbow grease. It's going to take a lot of research, and it's definitely going to take a lot of digging to find the right people. But the good news is I have the super simple intro to music libraries. And I'm going to explain to you what a music library is. A music library is what and where all of these key players go to. All the key players go to a music library to get their music if they're not working with people directly. But 90% of the time, they're working with a music library. And so I'm going to show you, and we're going to dig into what a music library is. And I'm going to tell you exactly how to find reputable music libraries and how to really, start getting in the game here. So what we're going to touch on what is a music library, why you should pitch your music to a music library, what is a sync license, the types of licensing agreements, and how to find reputable libraries. So let's read here. A music library is a company that is typically overseen by music publishers. Music libraries can represent large catalogs of music in various genres or represent only a handful of carefully curated songs in a specific genre. The purpose of the library is to secure sync licenses for their artists and their composers. Working with a music library is a great way to gain exposure and earn money from your music. A music library will have all the necessary connections in place to help you get your music to films, TV shows, advertisements, and video games. And they are oftentimes heavily connected with production companies and music supervisors who are in need of music. So a music library is ultimately your segue into this whole thing. So when you can't get in touch with a music supervisor, you get in touch with a music library because the music library has the connections with the music supervisors. Okay. Let me scoot my chair over a little bit. All right. Sorry about that. So this is why you want to get with a music supervisor, because it kind of takes out all of the legwork that you have to, that you would have to do when you start researching on your own. Now, you heard me mention a sync license, which after you do all of this and before you start pitching your music, after you've got it ready and everything, you will need what is called a sync license. And and a sync license is an agreement between music users and music copyright holders that allow the users to release songs in video format. That's called a sync license. So in a nutshell, you need to, in order to place music on the TV screen up against picture or up against video, you need a sync license. They need to present you with a sync license, and you need to agree to the terms of that sync license, which we'll talk about in the next couple of slides. So anytime your music is used in film or TV shows, advertisements, or video games, a sync license is needed because that's going to assure that, number one, you get compensated. That's going to assure that you're protected, and that's going to assure that everybody is on the same page. So anytime somebody's like, yo, I want to use your beat in a promo for Facebook, or I want to use your beat in a promo for my YouTube series, or I want to use your beats as background for my indie film, always make sure you have you always have a sync license. And an example I like to give everyone, one of my first endeavors in terms of film, I scored a film and I did about 4 or 5 scenes for this film, but I had no agreement, right? There was no agreement, but it was everywhere. Best Buy, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and it was selling out like crazy too. It sold out in 2 theaters. It was a success, by all means, but I had no license. So I didn't get anything outside of what I was paid up front. Lo and behold, it appeared on television as well. So here I am missing out on royalties. It was just a crazy situation, but that's why I make sure I tell people, make sure you have licenses and everything in order before you move forward or before you send your music, because once the damage is done, it's kind of hard to bounce back from that. So all of that, we're going to get into the music library agreements, because as I mentioned, the music library is really going to be the person who handles all of these agreements for you. Okay. So each music library is different. The 3 most common music library agreements, you have exclusive, and non-exclusive, and sometimes you have a work for hire, right? So those are the three most common agreements, and we're going to kind of go into detail about those here. You have exclusive. So an exclusive deal restricts you from pitching music to other sources, either long-term or for a period of time. The opposite, obviously, a non-exclusive is going to be where you can pitch and do whatever it is you want with your music. All right, which is that could be good as well. A work for hire, you can get paid up front, and you might have an opportunity to collect music on the back end. So I'm going to go into a couple of close-up examples of these and some pros and cons. The pros and cons of an exclusive library. We're going to start with the pros. Exclusive libraries are likely to have more prestigious clients. Your music becomes more valuable since your music isn't floating around everywhere. You have closer relationship with the library owners and the managers, and you might have higher sync fee opportunities. So I like to look at it in this way, right? When you go buy a car, you are more likely to spend, say, $30,000 on a new car versus spending $30,000 on a used car, right? Same thing goes for music. If it's music that everyone has access to, right, then it's not so much original. And when they're creating these programming, they want the music to be ahead. They want it to be top notch. They want to have better music than the competition. The only way that they can do that is if they curate and if they bring in music that nobody has heard, that they bring in quality grade A music, right? So an exclusive library typically has more prestigious clients sometimes because they become trusted because they know that the music isn't, the clients know that the music isn't floating around everywhere. The cons of an exclusive library is that you may be giving up all or a portion of your copyright. The submission process can be more work. They're very strict when it comes to collaborations, and you can't pitch your music anywhere else, and you'll be creating more music, right? That can also be a pro because we always need to create a lot of music. But to put these cons into perspective, most of the time you have an agreement with the library. So if you collaborate with an outside person, now that person needs to have an agreement with the library, and that gives the library more work, and a library may not really be wanting to work with anybody new, right? So that's why I say it's kind of strict when it comes to collaborations. The submission process may be more work in terms of the different type of versions you have to create, and perhaps the different deadlines that you have in the submission process itself. And again, you can't pitch your music anywhere else. So if you make 10 dope tracks that are all prepared and you sign an exclusive deal, you can't go pitch those 10 tracks anywhere else. Now you have to make brand new tracks, hence why that'll be creating more work for you. But again, the name of the game is quantity and definitely hard work. So I like to, have my music in a lot of different, situations. So this is kind of like a snapshot of an agreement here. And you would typically see words like, let's see, I'm looking for an exact word. So we're going to do the grant of rights. So the writer hereby irrevocably and absolutely transfers, conveys, grants, and assigns to the publisher, aka the music library, its successor and assignees in perpetuity the entire right, title, and interest throughout the universe, right? So you see how the verbiage is lengthy, right? And that just means that, hey, when you give us this track, this is our track. You're going to be entitled to your portion of the royalties, as will we, but this is now our track in perpetuity forever, right? So just always keep that in mind when you're trying to sign or when you're looking to sign these deals, right? It can definitely be a benefit, and it has turned out to be a benefit, but also you have to make that choice. You know what I mean? Do you want to sign away your music forever? But as a creative, the attitude should really kind of be, all right, well, I'm going to, try to get my own connections, or I'm just going to make more music, which is always a good thing. Okay. But always remember, a music library, they've basically done all of the groundwork for you in terms of getting connected. Non-exclusives, we go into the pros is that your music is free to pitch to as many places as you want. So you put out an instrumental album on Spotify and it's blowing up, but you want to pitch it to film and TV, then a non-exclusive library might be good for you, because now you will have that flexibility to really do what you want with your music, and you don't have that many restrictions there. Okay. And the splits may be more favorable. Your visibility is higher because clients come from everywhere, meaning clients who have money and clients who don't have money. You get a lot of eyes, okay, on your music. And they might have less strict submission requirements. The cons is there's a lot more competition. So you have to, excuse me. What I mean by competition is that there's just a lot of us that make music. Okay. So if you have less of a restriction and a less of a restriction on the submission process, and it's easy to get in, then a lot of people are going to be doing that. So instead of you standing out with just you and a couple of other people who decided to go the non-exclusive route or the exclusive route, now you have a lot more people because it's easier to get in. Now you're competing against a lot more people for these spots. In some non-exclusive libraries, they just collect music, which means your music kind of sits on a shelf forever, and you may never get a placement. You may get a placement 5 years down the line, which I've seen that happen plenty of times. But again, you want to make sure that you research these places as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then again, you may be giving up some of your publishing while devaluing your music. And the devaluing part is essentially, if you give your music away non-exclusively, right, and you can pitch it everywhere, that means everyone has the music. So now it's not as exclusive as before. And then also you have people, taking different parts of your music or different pieces of the publishing for no reason, right? You want to make sure it's worth your while. So this is, again, kind of like a non-exclusive library, and it just lays out ultimately the opposite of what the exclusive library told you. Work for hire. I like these kind of deals, okay? They can get a little tricky, but the name of the game is definitely negotiation, all right? So when work for hire, you get money up front. You can also collect royalties, not all the time, sometimes, okay? The placements are more likely, and then you get a closer library composer relationship. Also, the cons is that the royalty splits may be less favorable, very tight turnarounds, and very strict on collaborations. And here's a quick example that I wanted to show you guys. Now, this here kind of basically shows the agreement, and it says that we're going to talk about less favorable. What this is going to show you is that there was an amount of money that I was paid for this project, right? So cool. I cross it off my list. Boom, I'm getting paid up front. Now I have money in my hand. Also, you have a composer's percentage. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can get money on the back end as well. So I'm like 2 for 2 right now, right? But the thing is, you see, there's 50% here, right, of the composer side. Now, if you're familiar with BMI, they kind of operate on a 200% scale. So out of 200% on something that I created on my time, I'm only walking away with 50%, but I got a little bit of money up front. So for me, it kind of balanced out. You know what I mean? And again, it wasn't my only track, and I'm always creating. Okay. But also what this shows is that, I get that piece on the back end and I get that on the front end, but they own the track. So it's not always a it's not always a bad idea, but you definitely should always want to negotiate a work for hire, because maybe the kind of like a record deal, you know what I mean? They pay you in advance up front, but ultimately you have to pay that back somehow. Okay. So with this situation, I got offered money up front, got to collect something on the back end. You could probably negotiate higher, or maybe you can negotiate on the front end and say you want more money up front and you don't want anything on the back end. And the reason why I say that one of the pros is that the placements are more likely is because when the company pays you money up front, they probably already have a plan to recoup this money or to recoup the money that they gave you. Okay. So they're going to pay you $500 up front. That's because they have a client on the back end that has already paid them maybe $1,000, might have paid them $2,000. So now they can afford to pay you that, boom, deliver the track, then they get their money. Plus they get, everything on the back end. So again, that's why the placements are more likely, because I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't pay for music unless I know that music was going to make money for me. You get what I mean? So always think about that. One of the bonus ones here is a gratis agreement. All right. Now, what a gratis agreement is, we'll get to that. What a gratis agreement is that this allows you to collect everything on the back end. Okay. So you will collect everything on the back end, but they're not paying you anything up front. Gratis means free. So you're allowing them to use your music for free, but you get to keep everything on the back end, and you can do whatever you want with those, with that music. And those are the kind of agreements we get into when we start working directly with production companies, because a production company is going to allow you to, again, be as creative as you want to be as creative as you want to be, send them music, and then you're working directly and you're keeping everything, and you don't have to split with a music library. You don't have to split with the publisher or anything of that nature. All right. But overall, those are the top three, like exclusive, non-exclusive, and gratis. And of course, we threw in the work for hire, or we threw in the gratis and you have work for hire. Typically that you're going to find when you start approaching and looking for music libraries. So we're going to talk about how to find real and active music libraries. Now, this is going to always be about your research. So how I started, and what I recommend to you guys, is not simply doing a Google search for music libraries, because you can easily let me get out of here, but you can easily do a search for, right? You can go ahead and do a search for music libraries, and then this is what's going to pop up. You have royalty-free music, you got Epidemic Sound, Artlist.io, Millennial Mind. You have APM, which is a huge library. Sound. So you'll be searching all day. You know what I mean? You'll be searching all day through these things. However, when I started, what I did was really, really research, and I'm like super huge on research, and like so much that I dig way past asking people. I dig way past really, let me stop the screen share, but I dig past all that. Okay. And I really try to follow, there's a quote, and the quote was, wherever there is success, there will always be crumbs left behind, right? That's because people document their accomplishments. People also, again, like tell social media. Again, it's out there. People talk about this all of the time, their successes and their accomplishments and everything. So I use that to my advantage. I would go hashtag on Instagram. I would hashtag music libraries or music supervisors. And I will use that kind of tool to kind of lead me in a direction, whether it be finding another person who's licensing their music, or find hints on Facebook where somebody's looking for music for film and TV. I would do all sorts of things, but I would really, really be purposeful and really spend hours, researching these things. One tool I came across was and this is something to get you guys started on the way. I have to share the screen. Sorry about that. All right, so I have the screen up, waiting for it to pop up here. All right. I have the screen up. I'm not sure if you guys
hold on 1 second now.
Oh yeah, yep, no problem.
Okay.
Yep, sure. But while we wait for that, the next thing that I want to show you guys basically is a tool, a resource that I use when I started trying to really find the music libraries, okay? Because it's going to be really, really important for you to find the right music libraries that use your type of music, music libraries who are actually accepting music, and music libraries that, actually put in that work. So that's what I'm going to bring to you guys as soon as we get this, we get this screen shared here.
Stand by for 1 second.
Bear with us. No problem. Thanks. Tapping with you guys on the book.
There you go, Nelson. You should be all set.
All right, perfect. Thank you very, very much. Yep. All right. So this site here, guys, that you see is called musiclibraryreport.com. And this is a a very good resource and a good starting point when you get into that stage when you're ready to start submitting your music and getting your music out there. There is I don't know where's that. So there is a fee, a weekly fee for this, but I'm going to tell you what to do with this resource. What I did was I came here, looked around, and I figured out like this is going to be something good that I could use, but it's going to take a lot of determination and a lot of patience to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. So my goal was to find as many music libraries as I could, right? So when I came here, and I signed up, I think it was about like a week. Then you get access to, let's see, I want to see if I can find it. You have like composer interviews, cue critiques, services, and I want to see if I can find it. Music licensing. So maybe this is it. Yeah, I don't have permission because I'm not a member anymore. But what I'm looking for. So they have a section here. I'm not okay. Right here we are. All right, it's called library reviews. Right. So ultimately, the library reviews. What this tells you, it gives you a music library. Right. As you can see, like they have, like a lot. So this gives you the opportunity to really find real music libraries. You can click on the library and other people have shared their experiences, whether it's a good library, whether they take all day to respond, whether they accept a lot of music, what music they accept. And I was on here. My subscription was for like a week. So I stayed on here for a week, checking out as many as I could every single day and building myself my own database. And so I can, strategically reach out to these libraries. So this is a way that I like to tell everybody, you can kind of start with this website, because that will really, it'll really open up doors for you almost right away, because now you can start getting into the habit of submitting music and knowing what to look for in different music libraries. When we find a music library that's for us, how many tracks should we submit? So we got a question from Caroline. Now, for me, when you find a music library and everything goes well, that's the kind of music that you work on. I would really prepare a link with about 10 to 12 tracks, perhaps. You can even do about 5 or 7. Again, strategically, I like to just think of the people on the other side. Okay. On the other side, these are people, they might enjoy it, of course, but they listen to music all day long. Right. And that goes back to where we talked about pitching your best music. So if it's each piece of music that you are super passionate about, whether it's 3 tracks or 7 tracks or 10 tracks, I think that's what you should go with when you're submitting to when you submit to a music library. So there's really no set number of tracks. Like 10 to 12 kind of gives them an idea that you can create in volume, right? Because a lot of libraries want an album, and an album is between 7 and 10 tracks. So if you could present them with a full album, that's a better look for you. And it also shows you were able to create in volume. And also it kind of lets them see, again, the consistency in your sound and the consistency in your creative process. So just think, if sometimes I've been asked to send my top 3 tracks, and that part gets kind of hard, because I'm like, oh man, all these tracks are hot. Which one best describes me? And those are the ones that I end up going with. Are there, Eric asked, are there any differences for following this process if it's a multi-member band? So, there's not really any difference in, following the process. It's just more so that everyone collectively has to follow the process. Now, it does get a little sticky, again, as we mentioned, in the music libraries, where you can sign an agreement, but the library, you might reach out to the library with your music, all right, and they might like your music, but then you bring in other people and they're like, I don't really, like that music or whatever. That can become an issue. But as a band, you guys are definitely like, you're creating music together. So the agreement that you get into with the library, that's going to be the agreement for the entire band. Just outside of that, you just have to make sure that everyone is on the same page and you're following, you're following the process, or at least somebody is assigned to do so. You're welcome, Caroline. No problem. All right. So overall, this concludes my screen sharing portion, and we actually covered everything. So again, if for people who are watching, if you have any questions, I'm open to questions. Rod, tap back in if you have any questions. One thing I do want to elaborate on for everyone, aside from the strategies and aside from the processes and everything that I showed you in the slide, the one thing about sync licensing is that you have to keep your mental about you. And what I mean by that is, it's a game of patience. You'll spend a lot of time creating music, preparing music, tracking music, and it might seem like it's forever and that things aren't happening for you. You really have to, keep your mind on the prize. All right. And we're going to say, I'll say 6 to 9 months. All right. So you might create something in January, but you might not get a check for it for 6 to 9 months. And the reality of it is that when you do get your check might not be as much as you thought it was going to be or what you thought it should be, right? And in this new era of like streaming, the streaming numbers are terrible, right? They're very terrible, and it's not fair, but that is how it is for the moment. So keeping that in mind, you can do a lot of work, a lot of hard work. It's like, oh man, I can't wait until I get my first royalty check, or you have an amount. I want to make 10,000 in royalties every single month. I'm not saying that it's not possible. There are people that are on that level, but at the same time, though, it's all going to really boil down to your work and your consistency. And the part that I see a lot of people break down at is the consistency part. And that's because you do have to be, you have to carve out time. I'm not going to say be up every day, but you have to carve out time to make tracks, to make quality tracks, to make the tracks that are needed, to make the tracks that are requested of you, right? You have different changes. You have so many moving parts in this that you have to always make sure that your mind is in the right place, because you can send off, and this has happened to me before, you can send off 50 tracks and none of them get picked, right? You can send out 50 tracks and only one of them get picked, but you can send out 50 tracks and half of them get picked. You know what I mean? There was one season of the challenge that we had a pretty good run collectively where I was able to help people get their very first placements and maybe get some back-to-back placements and then collect their first royalty checks. And that's just the thing. Like you just don't know, you know what I'm saying? You might place it and you might not, but the foundation, when you have a solid foundation there and you have strategies in place to really navigate the game, you're going to crush it every single time, and again, for example, it's like when I reached one of my very first agreements with a production company, that was huge for me because now I'm on the other side of the fence and I'm able to go directly and work directly and keep everything for myself and get bigger placements. When I got into that, it helped a lot because my foundation was there, because I knew about certain terms. I knew about certain processes. I knew how to deliver music. I knew what they were looking for and how to nail a brief. So that helped me a lot. And it all started with the foundation. It all started again with the 4 things you have to do. It all started with me getting introduced to music libraries and how they work and finding the ones that work best for me. Okay. So again, always keep your mind right. Always keep that mental about you, because you're going to have some days, especially when you transition to full time, where this is what you wake up and do and what you go to sleep and do. You're going to transition into that to where every day is a hustle, because you have to find different ways to get paid up front. You have to make sure that all your royalties are counted. You have to find different ways to, again, market yourself. And you always have to keep getting connected. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of hard work. And that's where people break down, is because like, oh man, I didn't get a placement after all those 20 beats. You know what I mean? And again, if you only submit 5 beats, I mean, that's only 5 chances. You feel me? So a lot of these things, definitely, guys, I really want you to really soak in, go back and rewatch it if it moved a little too fast for you, but go back and watch it. Definitely visit my website, hit me up on social media, because I try to drop a lot of gems here and there, and everything that I tell people, this is based on what I did and what I do now. Okay. I keep these same strategies. I amp them up a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I'm always learning. And when I learn, I'm like, oh, I got to make sure that I share it with the people, because the reality of all of this as well is, regardless of all the information that's out there, you might not be able to, some people might not, just might not take the information. They might take a little bit of it and just forget about it, but I definitely encourage everyone to really take this information, soak it in, and really, really, if you're planning to get into sync licensing, to really soak it in and go for it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because as a producer, you're going to struggle with selling artists beats all the time, you know, because we want our money for these beats. We want 500 and 1500. We want that. But the reality is, hey, we're trying to make it. So are these artists, you know what I mean? So they've got just as much money as we do. But it's like, you have to find ways and be creative. And that's what film and television did for me. You know, you can still sell beats. You can still produce artists. You can still put out beat tapes. Really quickly, guys, beat tapes are an awesome resource because you can put those out and that gives you a lot of visibility to everyone, and they can always get picked up for sync. You know, I've seen that happen before too. But again, this is just a way to start making more money as a producer. So just think about, boom, on Monday you sell an exclusive beat. Oh, boom, Tuesday you find out you got a placement. Boom, now that builds up your resume. Now it's like, okay, I was charging $250 for a beat. Now I'm charging $500 for a beat. You know what I mean? I have music on Netflix. I have music on HBO. I did the song for this show or that show. You know, that's a way to build up your resume. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people look for. They like, well, why should I pay you X amount of dollars for the beat? You know, I used to get told like, oh, you not Timberland, you not Just Blaze. I'm like, okay, I know that, but the reality is it's gonna always be a struggle, you know. And sync licensing opens up a whole new avenue for you to get paid, be heard by thousands or millions, right? Increase your resume. You might be able to see your name on the credits, all type of things that otherwise maybe just producing by itself probably won't bring you. So when you could just, you know, do producing and submitting music for TV and getting it placed, now you're getting two bags. So that's the best way. You know, you get two bags. That's the best way to really explain it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, there we go, man. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I had to take the green screen down, but
no doubt.
as many opportunities to use your art to win is what we're all about, and it needs to be part of the conversation. As many revenue streams as possible, and we just want to continue to encourage people to create, encourage people to believe in themselves. We want to thank Nelson Johnson for coming through and lacing our shoes.
Absolutely.
Nelson, one last time, can you tell the people what they need to do at this point? Because this was a great primer. This was a great introduction to the complexities of sync licensing and the skill set that you have in support of people. So can you tell the people one more time what they need to do at this point?
At this point, the first thing you need to do, and because I get long-winded sometimes. So you want me to tell them like what they need to do, like, you know, from the slides, or you want me to just say like, after they leave this webinar, what they need to do?
What's that?
Oh, you need to know like what they need to do after.
Yeah, they need to come and visit you. They need
straight up. Okay, there we go.
They need to get scheduled for your. I'm sorry, they need to.
Yeah, I get a little
get connected with you.
So I was gonna start from the beginning. Like, okay, this.
Oh no.
So, yes, everybody. After this, I encourage you to visit my website, which is www. I'm so sorry. www.nelsonkjohnson.com. There it is, right there on the screen. Click that link. Visit my website. You can book one-on-one consultations with me. You can book. They're like an hour and a half. You can also book a 30-minute power session with me where we just go over, you know, kind of your goals, and I can answer any quick questions for you. I also have tools there that kind of go a little more in depth on how I structure music, the way that I do, and why I do it. Also, I have free tools there on my website, and I also have a copy of my music licensing quick start guide. And the quick start guide on my website, I designed that. So for instances like this, as soon as you leave here from this webinar, from this session, as soon as you leave here, you visit my website, you grab my quick start guide. What you're going to find there, you're going to find 6 music libraries that I've either worked with or that I've researched extensively, so that you will have the best chance at getting your music submitted and getting your music placed. You will also find tips on how to structure your music and what helps and how to do that. You will also find over 100 keywords of metadata that I use when I'm tagging my tracks. It's jam-packed with so much information and so much that you can just take again. And in theory, you leave here with the information, grab the quick start guide. By next week, you should be creating music and submitting music to music libraries and on your way with the resources that you need so you can start getting your music placed on MTV, VH1, BET, ESPN, everything. The sky is the limit, to be honest, guys. So make sure you visit my website, hit me up on social media if you have any questions, and go check out the tools I have available.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to close for tonight. And again, we want to thank Grove Studios for giving us the forum to be able to share this information with the public.
Yep,
please continue to support Grove Studios. Also support Amplify Fellowship at amplify-fellowship.com, as well as Leon Speakers. So that's it. I am Rod Wallace, and we are signing off. Peace.
All right. Peace, everybody. Thank you.